Today we'll speak about a spiritual giant, we can say, in who was born in the 19th century. Uh, he was earlier called as Venkatraman, and then later on, in his when he progressed in his spiritual life, he was then addressed as Ramana Maharishi. So Ramana Maharishi ji, who was born in the year 1879 in a small village in Tamil Nadu, and he was born in a typical Brahmin family, a South Indian Brahmin family, and because he was born in a Brahmin family, when he attained the age of 6 and 7, he was introduced to those Brahminical methods of acquiring religious knowledge, and he was known for his memory also at that age. So because of his memory, he was able to quickly grasp those religious things at that young age, tender age. And he was also fond of the Tamil poems which are relevant then spiritually, and he also grasped them quickly because of his memory. So, so when he grew and when he was around 10 or 11, his father had passed away, and he then shifted to his uncle's place. So, but then again, his family had a spiritual background. One of his uncles and also one of his family member um, had turned sannyasis. They had become a renunciate, and so he had that spiritual background in his family. Uh, and then his uncle, with whom he shifted, was in government service. So when Ramana Maharishi was around 13 or 14, his uncle had shifted to Madurai, and there his spiritual quest had gradually begun, and he used to visit the Meenakshi temple quite often. And he was inspired by the 63 Nayanmars which were inscribed in the Meenakshi temple, and he'd also read about it in Periyapuram. So then at the age of 16, he had a spiritual experience where he was feeling like he was dead, and then he had intense desire, and he started questioning, am I this body? Because this body is going to decay after it is dead. Am I this mind or the brain? Because even this brain is not going to remain after he's dead. And am I this personality or the emotions what I have? No. So this kind of questioning he kept on asking. He had a very intense quest or desire to get those questions answered, and this is what specifically was his philosophy all about. It's called Vichara technique or self inquiry. So, and then he gained a consciousness after this incident which was beyond mind. In Hindu tradition, it is basically called a samadhi state, which is not very easy to attain. But by his intense vichara, self inquiry, he was able to gain that level of consciousness. After that incident, he slowly, his interest in studies was reducing, and then he always wanted to stay alone, quiet, meditating. So this was around when he was 16 or 17. So when he was about to turn 17, he then wanted to go out of his house, but he knew that there would be some resistance from his family members, so he left without informing them. So he went to Arunachaleshwar, the place where we have the famous Shiva temple, and there he stayed in the temple for a few weeks, and he kept to himself here, and he was always praying for the grace that so many saints had received earlier on, and his desire was quite intense. And then later on, after a few weeks, he shifted to Guru Murtam temple, which is around that area of Arunachala. He stayed there for some time, and he had some visitors because his appearance and the way uh, his aura was at that point of time, he attracted some visitors, and even the visitors were able to make out that this person is something different and he is spiritually evolved. And later on, he shifted to, after a few years, he shifted to uh, a small cave in the Arunachal top hill, and there, one of the government official in the year 1902, he came to know about Ramana Maharishi ji, and he had come to him with a slate, writing slate, and he had a spiritual quest. You can say he was a jigyasu in Hindi. So he wanted some of his spiritual questions to be answered. And he asked around 14 questions in line with this Vichara technique. And that was eventually published, which was called as Nan Yar in Tamil, Who Am I? That is in English. So in 1913 also, one of the, because there was British rule that time, so one of the officials there also was little bit inspired by Ramana Maharishi, and he had also published some writing in the year 1913. So he was slowly becoming a known figure around that area. In 1929, B.V. Narasimha Swamiji, who is a known devotee of Shirdi Sai Baba, and he was the person who was responsible for Sri Sai Baba's Prachara in South India. And there is a famous temple in Chennai, Mylapore, which was, built by B.V. Narasimha ji. And in the year 1929, he had spent some time in the Ramana Ashram in Tiruvannamalai. So there he got inspired by his life, his teachings, Ramana Maharishi's philosophy. And then he actually wrote a biography called Self-Realization and the Teachings of Ramana Maharishi. So because of that book, he was known to some parts of India. In the year 1934, there was one book which got published, which was written by Paul Brunton. He had come to Tiruvannamalai in 1931, and he was also very inspired by Sri Ramana Maharishi ji's teachings of Self Enquiry. And that book was named as In Search of Secret India. And that book went on to become a bestseller, because of which Ramana Maharishi ji's ashram invited a lot of visitors from the Western world, Western countries. So his teaching is presently, if you see, he has inspired a lot of Westerners. His teachings is known as Neo Vedanta, Neo Vedanta. So because of that famous book of Paul Brunton, he was known to the Western world as well. And then some of his students, mainly David Godman, Punja Papa, and also this author, and few more. So his students had actually spread his teachings and philosophy, and because of whom he was well known all over the world. Even now, if you go, you will see that there will be few people from Europe who keep visiting that ashram. And you can say his teachings of self-enquiry is positionally in line with what Shankaracharya ji had to say about the Vedantas. His Shankaracharya ji is Advaita Vedanta, but there are a few differences between his philosophy and the Advaita Vedanta, but you can say it is positionally in line with those teachings. And Sri Ramana Maharishi has made quite a lot of impact when it comes to spiritualism in both India and also Western countries. And he is one of the spiritual giants of India. Thank you so much.